Today, I was telling you about the questions you need to ask before you get into marriage, okay? Before the cows moo, before the what aririri, before the everything does happen, you need to ask those questions. And we went through them, and you have even seen one person who was saying that their relationship goals is Zari and Diamond. Because the question is, whose marriage do you look up to? Aki ninge kuacha tu. Imagine your partner telling you that. My goal relationship is Zari and Diamond. Yani. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about the tips on having a cordial relationship, okay? Everything has happened. You have found you're the one, okay? And now you need to get into it. Let me tell you, there are people who just don't know how to live with each other. There are people who don't know how to relate with other human beings. It's always problematic. And this is who we're talking to. You might think you're okay, but really you're not, okay? The common denominator of all failed relationships is you. So you need to work on yourself. And we're here to help you, okay? Number one, does your spouse have a polygamous background, okay? Because sometimes we find ourselves in this situation, you know? You fall in love with somebody, you think they have sense, okay? You fall in love with somebody, you think they are 100%. And then you hear a conversation that just shakes you to your core. Talking about, mimi naeza pata sijui bibi watano. Ata grandfather yangu alikuwa na bibi watatu. Ata baba yangu alikuwa, you know, they have grown up in an environment where that works for them. Exactly, where the father has 3 wives and everything runs smoothly. So he thinks he's going to come into your life and put you as wife number 1, and then proceed to have wife number 2, and proceed to have wife number 3. Or maybe you've seen something sketchy going on, and you confront him. And instead of him having sense and telling you, okay, this is what happens. Let's just be honest. Sometimes when people are caught in the wrong, it's not that they'll own up to it, okay? Maybe you've gone through his phone, you found some suspicious text, and you're like, okay, who is Maureen? And they tell you she's my girlfriend, and now you don't know what to do. You don't even have an answer back. And they tell you, you know what? I come from a polygamous background, okay? I thought you were okay with it. I thought you knew what is happening. I am allowed to have as many wives as I want. And you're like, wow, I did not know this. So before you get into a relationship with somebody, you need to suss these things out, because it would be such a waste. You've been together for 4 or 5 years, and then now you're finding out things about his background that influence the way he thinks or she thinks, and it's coming as a shock to you, and you don't know how to act. It's just, it's a lot.
Let me also tell you, importantly, he may not be polygamous, she may not be polyamorous. In women, it's polyamory, right? Yeah. They may not be seeking multiple partners, but there is the community. They may be in hiding. You may be their beard. Wow. So that is also a very important question to ask. I love you, I appreciate you, but are you answer yourself and fill in the gaps. You may have to ask these questions. In this day and age, hey, a lot of people are used as beards. You don't want to be a beard. And in case you don't know what a beard is, there is a very interesting thing in the world called a search engine. Find it, find your answers. Moving on to another very interesting one. You know, every time I see these stories in K-dramas, because Turi has influenced me into watching K-dramas and Indian movies.
The best.
Yeah? Every time I see this, I just go, that's an Asian thing. It can't be an African thing. But it is. There are things called classes and class systems, where if your family does not tosha mboga, cheddar-wise, you cannot marry a family which has already tosha mboga. There is just a class system that does not work in this day and age, but in some families it's a very, very important thing. So you need to find out, are they more moneyed than you can ever imagine? Because it's gonna cause problems, especially if this person is not independent. They work within the family, they work for the family, they have a family business. It's important for you to find out if this is gonna be a hindrance. Do they have more money than your family? Is their family richer than yours? And how does that affect you? Because trust me when I tell you, people have been treated like actual, you know, those people who treat dogs badly, because some dogs are treated well. You may be treated like an actual garbage person simply because you do not have the financial capacity to get to their level. You do not even understand the way that level of people with money deals and works and lives and breathes and, you know, moves about. Like, money is confusing. So make sure that your families are compatible, especially financially, because sometimes it may be an issue.
And also there are things that also influence your relationship, like the upbringing of your partner. Were they brought up by their biological parent, or did they not have biological parents and they were raised by other people? This hits so close to me because I recently found out I have a sister and whatnot. So, you know, these are some of the things you now have to ask. Did you grow up with your biological parents? Who brought you up? Who raised you? And you need to find out these answers because let's be honest, we have heard of cases like there was this very crazy headline going on recently, I think it was last week, where a woman found out that the bride was the brother of the groom, like a long lost brother of the groom, but the wedding went on because the brother was adopted. So basically they were not related by blood. See, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, you guys didn't know. I have even had an incident, like personally an incident, where we all went for a rurashio, wacha nikwambie. And then the people who are pulling up, they're like, are these not our long distance cousins and whatever? So it's very important for you to figure out, where did this person grow up? Yes, your name is Mwangi, but you're Mwangi from where? You know, who are your parents? Who are your great-grandparents? And sometimes even when, like, our grandmother, like, asks such questions, you're like, what's the reason? Like, why do you want to know? Why are you being nosy? No, they need to trace the bloodline. They need to figure out, where did you come from? When you are kina nani, who is your auntie, who is your this? So that when people come from Rashio and they start greeting each other, thinking they're from the same side, or wow, long time no see, uliitwa huku, alafu mnaenda kuketi chini, mnaanza kupiga nduru, you know? So you need to figure out, okay, where does this person come from? Whomst are they? Answer the question.
The trauma. Imagine the bad things you do with each other in the sheets. Alafu sasa unaambiwa ni cousin yako. God damn. No, rebuke. Refuse. Anyway, another very important thing is to realize whether their parents had a happy marriage or not a happy marriage. Were they settled? Were they comfortable with each other? What was the environment in which this person grew up mirroring? Because a lot of times if you don't heal from these traumas, especially like some of us who already know things were not great, you try and find solutions, you try and heal. But think about people who haven't actually tried to heal and they've seen their parents being in such horrible marriages, being in such distress constantly, either financially or whatever. It really does make that person act a certain way, behave a certain way, and just be a different person in times of distress. And all this unlearning needs to be done. But you can only learn how to help them unlearn if you know what is happening with regard to their parents. Were they happy? Were they not? Were they together? Were they not? All of these answers are important. Are their siblings still married to their partners or not? And if so, these are the things and the impressions that they will have. It will seem easy for you to divorce. It will seem easy for you to just go a separate ways. But if you start to try and heal that, I feel like you can salvage the relationship and therefore the marriage. So be keen on that.
And family does really influence your
really
relationship
does. Yeah.
because, like, I grew up with two present parents and my partner grew up with one absent parent. And you might not think it's a big deal, but there are some things they do, they're like, oh, okay, I see where that came from. I see what's happening. Or they might say something and you're like, ah, interesting, you know. And you just get to suss out these things. Pole. Sometimes you don't even have to talk about it or say it out loud. But the fact that you know, at the back of your mind, you know, this person does this and this and this because there's an influence that happened at some point in your life.
Yeah.
And we're not saying this so that people can now use that as an excuse, okay? I am mean to you because my father was mean to me in class 5.
Nope.
That you're a 30-year-old man, Kamau. Why am I picking on Kamau? Like, you know,
Kamau,
like,
sorry.
You can't say you ghosted
Kamau.
me because your father left you. That it does not justify
You had to buy
anything.
milk and never came back.
Imagine, my father went away. That's why I ghosted you. I am dealing with the trauma. Please. And when it's such a generation where people use these traumas, especially now that everyone is a psychiatrist on social media, people use these traumas to justify
Scapegoats.
the things. You know, like, I ghosted you because my mother left us when we were young. What does that have to do? You're 41. Like, What? Aki, I can't even figure out like starting a new relationship right now.
But imagine
It's the ghetto out here.
it is. Guys, Lord, protect relationships.
40-year-old man still sending nudes because his mother did what when he was young.
Shame on you,
Yo.
Kamau. Moving on. It still is very important to also learn how their siblings are financially,
Yeah.
how they're doing in terms of education and all of that. And why we say this is because, you know, that cousin or that uncle or that brother who's always showing up asking for money, you know, that one, they exist. You need to be aware of them. So you're not also aiding and abetting someone who is going to make your life a living hell.
True.
Like you've seen people who you didn't know, your partner probably traveled, he went away, their brother showed up at your house and they're like, oh yeah, hi, I've just come to say hi. And then 3 years later, they're just saying hi to you in the same house. And because you let them in and you can't kick them out and their sibling doesn't know how to deal with it,
Yeah.
guess what? You got a roommate now. So please, you need to understand how these things work. Or it's the complete other opposite, where you're going through a really traumatic financial period and you don't know their brother is a billionaire. Na unaweza enda umwongeleshe hapa, umuite chamber, you talk nicely, you get a loan. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
It's important for you to know if their siblings are living decent lives, if they are troubled. It's also important for you to help with mental health. You know, it's just know who you're marrying into, their family. Yes.
And also, did your partner grow up in a loving environment or in a violent environment?
Ooh, because trauma responses.
Trauma responses. Like you go and you're trying to just hug your partner and they flinch and they do this. You're like, wow, what's happening? And sometimes now, because they didn't go to therapy and seek therapy, and now these cycles start coming back, and now you have children and they think that the only way to relate to your child is the way they grew up. And you know, you're like, wow, we really don't have to do this. You can also break the cycle. Your child does not have to go through the violent things, the rude, the bad things you went through. And I think even like some of us grew up in such environments where your parent is always talking about, like when they give you a nice thing, they're like, you should be grateful. You know me, I went to school, I had to scale a mountain and do all of this. You're like, wow, I am so sorry you went through this. But that does not
Why are you
mean
inflicting
that
this
I should
trauma?
feel bad when you
Yeah.
do something good for me. When you buy me shoes, it doesn't have to be accompanied by a story of how
You walked barefoot
you
and
were
you had
barefoot all over.
cracks.
You know, like, why am I feeling bad for having new shoes?
Shoes.
And it's just the environment they grew up in. They also grew up in an environment where they were told, you're not deserving of this. And they forget, or rather they don't seek help to break these cycles, and they continue it on their children.
And sometimes it's the complete inverse as well, where because they didn't have much growing up,
Yeah.
then now they just YOLO, you know? Like my mom used to say this thing, and sometimes I'm just like, Mom, and yeah, ulini lead astray. Ulini lead astray. She used to say, kesho itajijulia. Kesho itajisort. Ama kesho itajililia. Yes. Kesho, shughulikia ya leo, kesho itajililia. And I grew up with that YOLO mentality of like never caring about what's going to happen tomorrow. You got money today, let's ball. What's happening tomorrow? Kesho itajililia. And so me having to unlearn that as an adult, like by the way, kesho itajililia, lakini itakuwa inakuangalia ikilia.
Exactly.
As in, you know, so some of these lessons that we learned, we need to unlearn. Yeah, we just need to unlearn them. And it's important for you to understand where they stem from.
True.
Because you may see your partner being frivolous and you're just like, yeah, maybe we have enough. Kumbe, that's just how they are. They're not looking for a rainy day.
Yeah, and I spend too the money. Ama, they're
Chukula
being so
ifu.
stingy
Yeah.
and hoarding everything.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are you like
Why are
this?
you like
know,
this?
like we're good.
Trauma
We're in a good
responses.
space. Like, why are you holding on to your money like this? Hadi anakupatia 50 bob alafu akwambia hiyo 50 mukate nusu mununue vitunguu you know, like
Na ile Panadol ulikuwa unanisikia jana inatoka hapo. Yeah, you're looking at each other like,
like they're counting every cent. At a 10, you know the way you find 10 bob on your washing clothes. We're not saying it's a bad thing to be protective of your money, but when it's too much,
yeah, when you're a
that's
Maisa
problem.
or when you're a spendthrift. There are
Exactly.
extremes, and these extremes need to be noted. And then we need to understand, where is this coming from?